So I just came back from watching Hamnet for the second time, and baby, I understand exactly why it's nominated for every Critics' Choice Awards, Golden Globes Awards, and it's probably gonna get an Oscar. Let's get into it. I'm not gonna front. I was a little hesitant to go watch Hamnet because I heard it was a story about William Shakespeare and how he came about the play Hamlet. And I was like, I don't know much about William Shakespeare. I don't even know what Hamlet is about. Maybe this is not the movie for me. I am so glad that I just randomly decided to give it a chance because it was worth every moment. And you don't need to know anything about William Shakespeare or Hamlet to understand this beautiful love story, grief story, but most of all, spiritual story. Now, overall, the story of Hamnet is centered around Agnes, who is known by the community as a forest witch because of her many spiritual gifts, which we'll get into, and her husband, William Shakespeare, who is an aspiring playwright. He's super passionate, and he goes off to London to pursue his dream while Agnes stays behind to take care of their 3 children. They end up losing one of the children, and both of them experience different grief journeys. So overall, the story is about love and grief and how people heal and deal with grief differently. But it's so much more than that. Now, if you don't want any spoilers, you need to leave now because I'm about to get into some of the spiritual symbolism, some of the journey of grief, some of the lessons, themes, and all of that. Go on away and come back after you go watch the movie. So Agnes is known in her community as the forest witch because she was born to a mother who was a forest witch. And the reason that they call them forest witches is because they wander out into the forest and they have a deep spiritual connection to the herbs, to the wind, to the universal energy. She also has the gift of sight, as we would call it. She experiences clairvoyance and clairaudience, and also she has visions in her dreams that tells her about events and things to come. She can also read people's future by touching their pressure point between their index finger and their thumb. When she touches this area, her clairvoyance and her clairaudience kicks in, and she can tell them what's to come. So she gets like a lot of premonitions about things that's going to happen throughout the film. Now, the interesting thing about that symbolism is that the pressure point between the index and the thumb is known as the joining valley. When you utilize this pressure point, it connects to healing headaches. It connects to opening up the third eye. It connects to relieving sinus issues and sinus pressures. So anything dealing with the crown and third eye chakras is connected to this pressure point. So I found it so interesting that they chose that to be her sweet spot to be able to connect with somebody's energy and read them. One of the things that makes this film so brilliant is that immediately upon opening, we see Agnes in the forest working and connecting with a hawk who is her personal spirit guide animal. And that's so interesting because in actual real life, the hawk is known as a spiritual guide between physical and spirit realm. See, hawks have keen sight and hearing. So they are known for being able to connect with spirit and send messages between spirit realm and physical realm. The fact that Agnes herself is a reader and she can also connect with the other side, she is a physical manifestation of the energy of that hawk. Now, throughout the film, we kind of get some foreshadowing utilizing the hawk because the hawk ends up making a transition. And then when the child transitions, he sees the hawk, which is a sign that it is safe for him to finally cross over. It's a beautiful symbolism that they have going with the hawk. I really love that. Speaking of the hawk, William Shakespeare saw Agnes wandering around in the forest with her hawk and he thought she was kind of cute. So he decided to go flirt a little bit and he ended up petting her hawk. The hawk took a keen liking to him and Agnes took this as a sign that William was not only a good person, but he was maybe her person. So she embraced him. Fast forward, they ended up liking each other and they became hand-fasted. Now, this is when we get into the spiritual symbolism of hand fasting and cord cutting. I know y'all see a lot of people participating in cord cutting ceremonies, but a lot of people don't know the root of a cord cutting ceremony. It came from hand fasting. Hand fasting is a practice that occurred where 2 people would tie their hands together, wrap them in cord, and make a vow to each other. That was considered being married during this time. They hand-fasted each other. Now, in order to break that bond, you would practice a cord-cutting ritual. So we see now a lot of spiritual people doing cord-cutting rituals, but the significance of burning the cord was to disconnect the spiritual soul tie that came about through the hand fasting ceremony. So William Shakespeare and Agnes became hand fasted. She ended up getting pregnant. She went to the forest and she birthed their first child, who was Susanna. Now, to give y'all a little bit of a deeper understanding of William, you have to understand the background that he comes from. His father is very abusive and very hard on him. He actually owes debts to other people in the community, and he sends William out to teach their children because William is brilliant when it comes to English, the arts, playwriting. So he pays off his debts by sending his son William out to teach their children for free. And all while doing that, he is also abusing William. So William comes from that type of harsh, strict, abusive background. But his art is his freedom. That is how he's able to express himself. That is his escape. And we will learn that throughout the film. Now, after the birth of their first child, Agnes starts to notice that William is growing depressed. He's even having anger outbursts. So she taps into her spiritual gift, and she realizes that in order for him to be well and for this union to work, I need to free him and let him go off to London so that he can pursue his goal, his dream of being a playwright. And he does it. She ends up sending him off to London, and she stays back home to take care of their baby. Now, the interesting thing about this is that he makes a vow that he's going to go off to London and he's going to become successful, buy them a house or get lodges, as he said, and he's going to send for his family to come, which was very normal during that time. My own grandfather even did that. My granddaddy left the South and came to New York, set up shop, and went back and got his wife and children from the South, right? So that's a very common practice back in the day, you know. But the point is that William ended up going off to London. He left his wife behind to take care of their first child, and she was also pregnant with 2 unborn children at that time. Now, the birth of the twins Hamnet and Judith offered us the opportunity to get to learn more about their mother, Agnes. Remember, Agnes is known in the community as a forest witch because she's born to a forest witch. And up until their birth, that's really kind of all we know. Well, during her journey of birthing her beautiful children, we end up finding out that Agnes' mother actually became pregnant with the child after her, and she transitioned, she passed during the birth of that child. Agnes deeply grieved that. Her mother was an herbalist. Her mother actually instilled the spiritual protection and spiritual knowledge in Agnes. She taught her about various herbs, including mugwort, which is highlighted a lot in this film. Now, in real life, mugwort is known as the herb that is the ultimate healer. It is also most commonly known for increasing your dreams, your intuition, and your gift of sight, astral projection as well. What's interesting is that Agnes's mother is teaching her about the mugwort and different herbs, and she's telling her to pay attention to your dreams as she's tapping on her third eye, which is the chakra that's known for intuition and divine sight, guidance, premonitions, and many of the gifts that Agnes has. She taps on her third eye and tells her to pay attention to her dreams because she knows that that gift has been passed down to Agnes. So as an adult, we find out that Agnes grew up as a motherless child because her mother transitioned during childbirth when she was young. As she is reflecting on this during her own birth journey, she ends up giving birth to 2 twins inside of the home. Judith was born unalive, but eventually, after doing some skin to skin, she came back, and that's how she ended up with 3 children. Well, Agnes ends up instilling the divine knowledge of spiritual protection, herbalism, as well as understanding your spiritual gifts upon all 3 of her children. Now, Agnes is the primary parent, but her and William are still happily in love and together. He travels back and forth between home and London a lot. Remember, he's in London pursuing his dream of being a playwright, but he's present in the home as much as he can be. Of course, during that time, what they was riding horses, you know, I don't know how he was getting back and forth. I think they showed him on a horse or something like that, but he was getting home as much as he could. But as you can see, it definitely clearly hurt every time he would return to London. London. And baby, the character that really emotionally took me under was the young Hamnet, especially at the turning point of the film, where there's a moment where Agnes gets a premonition that something is coming because of how the bees are moving, which speaks to that forest witch energy, right? So she gets a premonition that something is coming, and she tells them to keep the children inside because something is in the air. Now, what's so interesting about this is that up until this point, we know that Hamnet and Judith are super close. Of course, they're twins, but they're fraternal twins. However, they have identical twin energy because they think that they can be mistaken for each other. There's a beautiful, sweet scene where they actually swap clothes and they try to fool their parents, and the parents play along with the idea of like, yeah, we don't know who is who, because they want them to understand that it's beautiful for them to be that close and to have that connection, and they want them to keep that for as long as they can. And I think that they did a great job of adding that scene to really characterize the oneness that these twins had. Well, Agnes got that premonition that something was coming, and it came. Judith ended up falling sick with pestilence, which is something that the young children of that time would pass from often. In fact, one of the elders talks about how she lost multiple children to the same thing, right? So Judith ends up falling sick, and she's literally on her bed, and Agnes is doing the best she can to try to heal her and take care of her. She's giving her different herbs and doing different things. Well, Hamnet lays next to Judith, face to face, and he trades his life for hers. He tells her that he sees the energy, which the energy that he's seeing, because he too has the gift, the energy that he's seeing is the angel of unaliving, right? So he's saying that he sees the energy, and he tells Judith to turn her back to it, and he faces her and he says, breathe with me. I trade my life for yours. Father told me to be brave. I'm going to be brave and lay down my life for you. I'll go, you stay. Judith ends up staying, and Hamnet ends up transitioning. And that is the turning point of this film, because that's when this love story turns into a tragedy, which is interesting because, again, this film is supposed to be about how the tragedy of Hamlet, written by Shakespeare, came about. So the love story turns into a tragedy, and both these parents, because William came back immediately once he heard that Judith was sick, but by the time he made it back home on that horse, I guess, it ended up being Hamlet who had transitioned. Both of the parents go into a journey of deep grief, but their grief showed up different. Agnes blamed William for not being present and not supporting the children. She said, Hamnet, he passed in agony and you weren't even here to support him. So she blamed the tragedy on William, and William kind of internalized his grief. He left and went to London after Agnes told him, we don't need you here anymore. Just go, chase your dream. We don't want you here anymore. He left and went to London, and that's where he began expressing his grief. And William expressed his grief through his art. He wrote a play about it. He wrote the play about the transition of his son, Hamnet, and he called it Hamlet, which, according to the film, during that time, the names Hamlet and Hamnet were often interchangeable in text, as though we hadn't cried enough by this point, because baby, we was crying the whole film, from the time she birthed the twins to the time that Hamnet transitioned to when her mama transitioned, and now we have William, who is really showing us his grief journey through his play Hamlet. In the play, Hamlet, who is named after Hamnet, the son, is seeking revenge for his father's unaliving. The ghost of his father is his guide. Now, what makes this symbolism so interesting is that in real life, William was trying to train Hamnet to be similar to him. He was trying to really get revenge for his own childhood by being a better father to his own son and keeping his son away from his father. So in many ways, the play was reminiscent to him apologizing to his son for seeking revenge against his father through how he raised him. He was raising his son through his own inner child wounds instead of raising his son to give him the love that he needed for him. Huh? So in the play, William is apologizing to Hamlet for not being the good father to him that he needed and for using him as a tool for revenge. And during this apology in the play, William is really eye to eye, third eye to third eye, crying to Hamlet as though he is crying out to his own son. We in the theater just a boo-hooing. The movie is good. Now, Agnes and William had not spoken in months. She actually heard about his play through the grapevine, and she popped up to see for herself because she's like, how are you going to do a play named after my son? My child, and not even tell me what y'all got going on over here. Agnes pops up at the play, and immediately she understands when she sees William crying out to his son, asking for forgiveness and releasing his energy. She realizes that William too is grieving. And in that moment, she chooses to not only forgive William, but to free the energy of her son to finally crossover. That's when we see a young Hamnet do the spiritual call that his mother taught him to call in the hawk. He looks into the sky and he sees the hawk, the messenger between physical and spirit realm. And that is his sign that it is okay to cross over. He looks at his mother. They exchange a gesture of love. He turns around and he walks and disappears. Hamnet has crossed over. Baby, the movie was good. We was crying. See, I think one of the themes of this movie is the value of loving somebody through their grief, even when their grief doesn't look like yours. Oftentimes when we think of a love story, we forget the grief journey being a part of the love story. When you are in love with somebody for a long period of time, some type of transition will occur. And it's not always the transition of a person. Sometimes it's the transition of a job. Sometimes it's the transition of a home. Sometimes it is the transition of a parent or a child or a close loved one, a friend. How will you love them through their grief? What about when y'all are both grieving? How will y'all love each other through your grief? That is what this film is about. This film is about love, it's about grief, and it's about spirituality being the stronghold of all of it. Between her being the forest witch, the herbalism, the hawk symbolism, the mugwort, having the spiritual gift of sight, understanding the joining wall, all of the spiritual symbolism in this film is just beautiful. This film is brilliant. It is well done. It is super emotional. And baby, it deserves every award it gets during award season. I'm just going to say that now.